This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. It is Monday, May 10th. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, prices on the rise from food to big-ticket items. So what is behind it and exactly how long will it last? Plus, the price of gas going up as well after a cyber attack shuts down a fuel pipeline. Riots in Jerusalem. Why are Arabs rioting? Why is Jerusalem itself such a key issue? And what could this mean for Israel's precarious political situation? A medical sensor under the skin, the goal to prevent infection from spreading and stopping future pandemics. And worship leader Sean Foyt starting his Summer of Revival tour with thousands showing up to praise the Lord and receive his mercy this weekend in Texas. Those stories and more are ahead in this edition of CBN NewsWatch. We want to begin this half hour with the higher prices you've probably already noticed on everything from food to household appliances, even things like razors. Costs have gone up by more than 10% on a wide range of items. As the economy recovers and businesses reopen, demand is running high. But there are bottlenecks in the system. The Wall Street Journal reporting that includes finding enough truck drivers to transport key materials to factories and construction sites. The Federal Reserve believes the price increases from problems in the supply chain will only be temporary. And get ready for higher prices at the gas pump after a cyber attack shut down the pipeline that carries gasoline and other fuel from Texas to the eastern part of the United States. Now, the Biden administration says an all-hands-on-deck effort is underway to restore those operations. Adele Hurd is on this story.
Analysts say gas prices could hit a 3-year high today, thanks to a crippling cyber attack on America's largest fuel pipeline. The Colonial Pipeline supplies 45% of fuel to the East Coast. Its 5,500-mile network carries gas, diesel, and jet fuel from Texas to New Jersey.
It's crucial to have this pipeline in service. If it drags on beyond, say, 3 or 4 days, we may start to see some supply challenges.
Overnight, gasoline futures jumped more than 3% to $2.22 a gallon, the highest since May of 2018. Federal officials say an Eastern European criminal organization known as DarkSide appears to be responsible. The group has a long history of ransomware attacks, in which hackers shut down a company's website or computer operations until it agrees to pay as much as millions of dollars. The Biden administration is now allowing truckers who deliver fuel to states impacted by the shutdown to drive more hours than normal each day. The White House has also drafted an executive order on cyber warfare to toughen digital safety standards for federal agencies and contractors that develop software for the federal government, because experts say these kinds of attacks are here to stay.
We have seen attacks on critical infrastructure over the past 5 years, but nothing of this size and scope, but also kind of foretells this is what life is likely to be like in the future.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Canadian pastor Artur Pawloski was arrested Saturday for allegedly holding a church service that violated new public health orders on gathering. Pawloski and his brother David were accused of organizing and attending an in-person gathering that day. That is according to Calgary police. Police say they served the Pawloskis a new court order prior to Saturday's service, but the brothers were detained because they chose to ignore those requirements. The arrest came after Alberta Health Services received a directive to stop various gatherings and rallies that defy public health orders across the province. Pawloski is a longtime street preacher and the pastor of Cave of Adullam congregation in Calgary. Turning now to Jerusalem, Jerusalem Arabs clash with Israeli riot police on the Temple Mount today, with more than 300 people injured. As Chris Mitchell now reports from Jerusalem, the riots in the city and around the country are having political consequences inside Israel and international ramifications.
Monday's clashes are the continuation of riots for days between Jerusalem Arabs, Palestinians, and Israeli police. The unrest began over a land dispute in a Jerusalem neighborhood, escalating into more violence over the weekend during the Night of Power, the holiest night of the year for Muslims.
In recent days, we've been witnesses to violent riots in Jerusalem, influenced by inciting groups. We will not allow any extremists to destabilize the calm in Jerusalem. We will enforce law and order decisively and responsively.
This is all happening during the holy month of Ramadan, often associated with calls for jihad and holy war. Palestinian Muslim groups, including Hamas and Fatah, have called for martyrdom and terror operations during this month. An international group of Muslim scholars supported by Turkey and Qatar issued a sermon on Friday calling for violence, jihad, and self-sacrifice, praised heroic jihad operations of the jihad fighters in Palestine and the young Palestinians deployed on the battlefront in Jerusalem. On Israel's southern border, Hamas terrorists launching missiles into southern Israel, as well as sending incendiary balloons, sparking dozens of fires. The violence seems spontaneous, but according to Itamar Marcus of the Palestinian Media Watch, it's not.
It was the Palestinian elections, and tragically, Palestinians vote for whoever they see as leading the terror war against Israel.
The riots are also making an international impact. Demonstrations in Jordan called for the government to break its ties with Israel. Turkish President Erdogan calling Israel a terror state, and the U.S. called for both sides to exercise restraint. Mansour Abbas, the head of Ra'am, warned on Saturday, Al-Aqsa is a red line. The aggression toward the holy site and its worshippers is unacceptable and offensive. On Monday afternoon, another potential flashpoint. Today is Jerusalem Day, when Israelis mark the reunification of the city during the 1967 Six-Day War. Authorities are allowing the march, but not allowing Jews on the Temple Mount and altering the route to prevent potential clashes.
For more, Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem. So, Chris, why is the city of Jerusalem at the heart of these conflicts?
Well, Ephraim, Jerusalem is the epicenter for many people. It's the prize of both Jews and Muslims. For Jews, this is the place where the Temple Mount, where the first and second Jewish temples were, going back to King Solomon 3,000 years ago. And so for Jews, it's the holiest site in all of Judaism. And it's been united now. We mentioned that in Jerusalem Day after more than 2,000 years. That happened in 1967. So the Al-Aqsa Mosque is holy to many Muslims. And many Muslim leaders, and it's happening right now as well, they're making the claim, and many believe it's a false claim, that Israel is undermining that mosque. And so this religious fervor, and this on both sides, especially with Muslims right now during the month of Ramadan, really explains a lot of what's happening right now on the Temple Mount and here in Jerusalem. As we mentioned in the story, the religious roots for Muslims are really what's driving much of this happening right now.
So how do these riots affect building a coalition government?
Well, they could have a profound impact, Ephraim. Right now, Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett, they need the support of a small Islamist party, an Arab party called Ra'am. We mentioned Mansour Abbas, the head of that party, was mentioned in our report. So these riots actually put Mansour Abbas in a very difficult place. He's the head, as I said, of an Arab party. But it's going to be difficult for him to join these Jewish parties if the people that support him are blaming Israel for violating the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and that's the claim right now. So it's a red line for him, and so it also makes it hard for Bennett and Lapid to really working with an Arab party that many people blame for part of being associated with some of the people that are against coming against Jerusalem and sparking these riots. So it really complicates an already complicated situation, trying to cobble together a coalition of center, left, and right parties, as well as this small Arab party called Ra'am.
So what happened in the Jerusalem neighborhood to provoke these riots, and what did the deputy mayor of Jerusalem tell you?
Well, we had an interview with her earlier today, Ephraim, and it's a small neighborhood here in Jerusalem. It's called Sheikh Jarrah. And just going back in some of the history, before the 1948 War of Independence, the Jews owned this land and the houses there. When they lost that in 1948, Jordan gave those places to the Arabs living there right now. They've been there 65 years. Now, there was a compromise that was between both these Jewish owners and these Arab tenants that they could stay there. They called it a protected tenancy, and they could stay and pay what's called a symbolic rent to the owners. However, the Palestinian Authority, according to the deputy mayor of Jerusalem, came in and really upset that compromise. And so really what was working has now become sort of a nationalistic fervor for many of these Arabs. That's been the pretext for some of these riots. Now, the ruling that the Supreme Court was going to have has now been postponed for a month just because of all the extenuating circumstances right now.
Quickly, before I let you go, how could this affect the Abraham peace accord deals?
Well, just like with Ra'am and some of these Israeli political parties, it puts the relationship between some of these Sunni Arab nations like the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, puts them in a difficult place. And it's an attempt, many people believe, by groups like the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, and other Islamist groups to really break up this relationship because they're threatened by the normalization of these relationships and they want to break it up. So it puts these Arab countries in a difficult position. They want the normalization, but they don't want to be seen as siding with Israel if Israel's being blamed for all the violence happening on the Temple Mount and especially at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So in both the Palestine here internally and externally, these riots are causing many problems.
Very tense indeed. Thank you, Chris Mitchell, for your reporting. Much appreciated. I want to turn now to some other stories in the news beyond the headlines. The governor of Montana has signed a bill banning transgender athletes from taking part in school and university sports in their new gender. Opponents say the new law will further harm transgender young people who have already been marginalized. Supporters say it will make sure the playing fields in girls' sports remains fair. California lost population last year. It is the first time the Golden State has lost population on a yearly basis. Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom says it's because of the pandemic. Republicans argue the state is losing people because of its high taxes and left-wing politics. And a growing number of states are moving to digital ID, so the card people use to prove their identity will be a thing of the past, with more people relying on digital IDs on their phones for things like mobile driver's licenses. The well-known TV evangelist, Reverend Ernest Angley, passed away Friday. A statement of his ministry on his ministry's website says, Pastor, evangelist, and author Reverend Ernest Angley has gone to heaven to be with his Lord and Master at the age of 99. He touched multitudes of souls worldwide with the pure word of God confirmed with signs, wonders, miracles, and healings. He truly pleased God in all things. He and his late wife, Esther Lee, known as Angle, appeared together in tent revivals, auditoriums, and churches throughout the South before moving to the Northeast part of Ohio in 1954. Angley led the Grace Cathedral Church in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, for several decades. Coming up, it is a sign of the times, a medical sensor that would be implanted under the skin. The idea, stop infections before they spread. We're going to tell you how it works when we come back.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart, Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
A human check engine light, that's what one military doctor is calling a next-generation technology that could ultimately stop a future pandemic. It actually is a tiny hydrogel sensor that sits right under the skin. It was originally developed to help treat diabetes, but for the Department of Defense, it is a way to stop the spread of infection in its tracks. Our national security correspondent, Caitlin Burke, has the story.
Investment in this kind of technology has been going on for years, all with one goal: to protect the soldiers protecting us.
What we do is we say, well, the science is interesting, but we're translating that. We're translating that into application and benefit. And it's something, frankly, I think the Department of Defense does really, really well. We can see science, but we say we have mission. We have a national security mission.
In March of 2020, the USS Theodore Roosevelt made headlines when more than 1,000 sailors on board tested positive for COVID-19. For 2 months, the outbreak kept the ship and its crew of 4,800 sailors from their mission of defending our nation. Dr. Matthew Hepburn says he's devoted his entire career to prevent that from ever happening again.
What we want to do is detect an infection as early as possible, before someone even spreads it to another person, to try to prevent that infection in the first place so that it never happens. But if it does, we detect and treat. And what we also might want to do is then make sure everybody else is protected.
That dream now appears possible thanks to this tiny hydrogel biosensor. Placed under the skin, it measures what's going on at a tissue level. For example, the amount of lactate in your body.
The level of lactate at the tissue level is a really good indicator that someone is starting to get sick. It's one of those things that we see go up pretty early in severe infection called sepsis.
The sensor doesn't identify what infection you might have. It's more of an alert. Hepburn compares it to a check engine light.
Like a check engine light doesn't say, there's a problem, you're out of oil or something like that. It just says there's something wrong. There may be something wrong with your engine, so take a closer look. So the idea of the sensor is check engine light goes off, then you need to do some more specific tests to figure out if you have COVID or something else wrong with it.
This next generation technology was invented by Profusa. The private sector company created it to help treat diabetes. Now, through a partnership with the Department of Defense, the sensor has been developed for a number of other purposes. Besides detecting infection, it can also measure oxygen levels.
So you can think of like a pilot. You'd want to know tissue level hypoxia or low oxygen as an early signal that you're not getting enough oxygen to your tissues.
Currently in clinical trials, this, like all other vaccines and treatments provided by the Department of Defense, must get FDA approval. This one appears to be well on its way to that achievement. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Still ahead, the Biden administration is working on ways to re-enter the deal with Iran over its nuclear program, but as they do, some are making it clear those being held prisoner in Iran, including persecuted Christians, have to be a part of the deal. We'll have the story for you when we come back. Stay with us.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
As the Biden administration works on negotiations with Iran over its nuclear program, some say the Islamic Republic's persecuted prisoners must be a part of the deal. CBN News senior Washington correspondent Jennifer Wishon explains why.
Christians and other religious minorities face imprisonment and torture in Iran because they're seen as a threat to the Islamic regime. Yusuf Nadakani is the leader of the evangelical church in Iran. He was pastoring a thriving flock of 400 members when he was violently arrested in 2018. It was his most recent in a long record of run-ins with Islamic law enforcement that included being sentenced to death, all for practicing his Christian faith. He's currently incarcerated at the nation's notorious Evin prison, and he's not alone. Iran routinely mistreats, imprisons, and tortures non-Muslims.
The Iranian government must be held accountable for their abhorrent treatment of Pastor Yusuf.
Now, as the Biden administration works to reestablish talks with Iran over its nuclear program, religious freedom advocates say the U.S. must use every ounce of leverage to help the persecuted.
The continued unjustified detainment of prisoners like Pastor Yusuf increasingly jeopardizes Iran's already unstable position.
Commissioner Johnny Moore quoted Wang Shenyu, an American who was held hostage for 3 years in the same prison that houses Pastor Yusuf.
Iran has demonstrated that it changes its behavior only in response to strength in the form of American-led international pressure. If the present administration returns to the JCPOA without extracting concessions from Iran beyond the nuclear threat, it will relinquish all U.S. leverage over the regime. Diplomacy can't succeed without leverage.
Appeals to the Biden administration came during a hearing to highlight the Prisoners of Conscience program sponsored by the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Family members advocated for their loved ones who've been jailed for their faith or belief. Susanna Coe spoke about her husband Raymond, who served as pastor of the Evangelical Church of Malaysia before disappearing during this well-orchestrated abduction.
He loves to tell Bible stories to whoever that is willing to listen.
And since the commission began its Prisoners of Conscience program, 14 have been released. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Still ahead, praise leader Sean Feucht starting his Summer of Revival tour for the year, beginning in Texas, where thousands came to praise and worship the Lord over the weekend. We'll bring you a look when we come back. Stay with us.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
a 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
From Washington, D.C.
Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation.
Uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody, John Jessup, Jenna Browder, and Eric Phillips, bringing you the political news that matters.
Regulations on the energy industry are going to have dramatic ripple effects throughout the economy.
News you can trust.
We're people who are committed to protecting the most weakest and the most vulnerable.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6.
Praise leader Sean Foyt and his Let Us Worship team have started their Summer of Revival tour. They began in Corpus Christi Thursday, where 5,000 people came. Worshipers flooded the altar, leaving their pain, addiction, and brokenness behind. Then Foyt traveled to Houston on Friday, where the crowd came alive again despite efforts by protesters to distract and frighten worshipers. Miracles continued throughout the night as so many were moved to tears while watching God mend the brokenhearted. Thousands sang, danced, and experienced God's love. The team plans to cover 34 cities in 15 states over 87 days. You can find their schedule at cbnnews.com. Time now for your Monday motivation. I leave you with this thought to jumpstart your week. Don't allow the cares of life to overwhelm your heart. Relax and ride out every storm on this reminder raft. Nothing takes God by surprise. He's built you for this and every lesson it brings. Hold fast to your faith and prepare to share your testimony. You're not going under. You're sailing right through. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. You can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online at cbnnews.com. We would love to know what you think about any of the stories you've seen here today. You can email us at newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We certainly would love to hear from you. Make this a marvelous Monday. We look forward to seeing you right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody, and God bless.